Today we are going to learn about demand and supply curve. Before that, let me briefly talk about different types of market. Types of market. So the first type is monopoly market. So in this market there are more buyers than sellers. So sellers have bargaining power. Okay. Second type of market is quite opposite of monopoly market, which is monopsony market. So in this market there are more sellers than buyers. So buyers have bargaining power. Okay. And third type of market is competitive market. So in this market there are more sellers and more buyers. Okay. So in competitive market, um, neither group, neither buyer nor sellers have bargaining power. Buyers usually take the price as decided by the sellers. So in this video, we'll basically focus on competitive market. We'll not talk about monopsony or monopoly market. So our focus is only on the competitive market. Now let's talk about demand curve. So usually the demand curve is downward sloping. Please note I am saying usually this is the downward sloping. There are few cases in which demand curve is upward sloping as well. So usually this is downward sloping, and there is a convention that we write price on the vertical axis and quantity on the horizontal axis. This is just the convention. Now the question arises, why the downward sloping is demand curve is downward sloping. So I'll give you three arguments. First is buyers or consumers have different values of good. Different values of the good. Which means when the price is high, people who are willing to pay a higher price only buy the goods, and when the price is low, the people who are willing to pay lower price as well as who are willing to pay a higher price, both of them will buy the good. So when this means the quantity demanded and the price is inversely related. Whenever the price is higher, the quantity demanded decreases, and that's why the demand curve is downward sloping. Second argument is substitution effect. So when the goods becomes more expensive, people switch to substitutes. For example, let's say the Coca-Cola has become more expensive in the market, so people will switch to different cold drinks which are cheaper than the Coca-Cola. So that's the substitution effect, and this also shows that the price and the quantity demanded is inversely related. Third argument is income effect. So when the good becomes more expensive, people feel poorer and they feel that they cannot buy good as much of it, so they spend less money in everything. They buy less of everything, and this again shows that the price and the quantity demanded are inversely related. and this is generally true for the normal good. Okay, normal good. This is different when it comes to inferior good. So we'll talk about inferior good in elasticity chapter. So let's now only consider about we'll only consider normal good. So basically, these are the three different reasons, which is why demand curve is downward sloping. Now let's talk about consumer surplus. So consumer surplus is the consumer's gain from exchange, or this is the difference between his or her willingness to pay and the actual price paid. So let's say in the current market the price of a good is $12, okay, and there are 8 potential buyers in the market. The first buyers has the willingness to pay $20. Second buyer has willingness to pay $18, and third buyer has the willingness to pay $16, and so on. The willingness goes on decreasing by $2. So by definition, the consumer surplus for the first buyer is just 20 minus 12, right? Which is just $8. And for the second buyer, this is 18 minus 12, which is $6. For the third buyer, 16 minus 12, which is $4. Okay. And for the fourth buyer, which is 40 minus 12, which is $2. Now, what about the other buyers whose willingness to pay is lower than the $12? So which may they will basically choose not to buy the good because their willingness is below the current price of a good. So the total consumer surplus is basically the sum of the consumer surplus of each buyer, which is 8 plus 6 plus 4 plus 2, which is $20, right? We can also find the consumer surplus from graph by calculating the area of each rectangle. So what is the area of the bigger rectangle? So area is basically base into height. Okay, so base is nothing but 1 unit, right? So this is 1, and the height is 20 minus 12, which is 8. So this is 8 times 1, which is 8 again. And similarly for the second rectangle, we'll get 6 times 1. Okay, and similarly for the third and fourth rectangle. So in order to get the total consumer surplus, we'll basically add the area of each rectangles, and then we'll get the $20 as the total consumer surplus. Now this is this example has only 8 potential buyers. Now when there are millions of buyers in the market, then the demand curve will look like a straight line, you know. In this example, the demand curve is a step function because there are only 8 potential buyers, but when there are millions of buyers, these step functions will become infinitely small and will look like a straight line. So in that case, okay, let me draw the graph. Okay, so On the vertical axis this is price, on the horizontal axis there is quantity, and let's say the price is here $12. So the consumer surplus is the area um, above the price level and below the demand curve. Okay, so this is the area uh, of consumer surplus. Okay, now let's consider two individual demand curves. So here in the graph you can see that there are two demand curves, that is the blue line and the green line, of the same quantity at different places, that is place A and B. Okay, so now the question is, how do we find out the market demand curve? Market demand curve. So you can see that within the price range $0 to $50, the total quantity demanded is the quantity demanded at place B given by the green line, and the quantity demanded at place A given by the blue line. So the total quantity demanded is basically the sum of these two. So I can draw a straight line joining this point and 1500 and this point, that is 1500 unit, because on the horizontal axis you can see that the 1500 is the sum of 500 and 1000. Okay, and at this point the total quantity demanded is only given by the blue line, because here you can see that quantity demanded given by the green line is 0, and above $50, above this price, the total quantity demanded is same as the quantity demanded given by the blue line. Okay, here you can see above this price the total quantity is given by the blue line. So our market demand curve is this red line. Okay, this entire red line all the way from here to this point. So this is our market demand curve. Okay, now let's understand supply curve. Again, in most of the cases supply curve is upward sloping, but there are a few cases in which supply curve is downward sloping. Due to convention, we write price on the vertical axis and quantity on the horizontal axis. Now the question arises, why the supply curve is upward sloping? So I'll give you two arguments. So the first argument is cost of producing a good is not equal across all suppliers. So this means that at a low price, a good is produced and sold only by the low cost suppliers, and at a high price, a good is produced and sold by both the low cost suppliers and high cost suppliers. So which means the quantity, the price and the quantity supply are directly related, directly proportional, which means as price increases the quantity supply also increases, and due to why the supply curve is upward sloping. And the second reason is low hanging let me write low hanging root principle, which means the suppliers use the resources which has the lower use the resources first which has the lower opportunity cost, and then use the resources which has the higher opportunity cost. So the marginal cost to produce an additional unit of output increases as the quantity increases. So basically these are the two reasons um, uh, which is why the supply curve is upward sloping. Now let's understand the producer surplus. Producer surplus. So producer surplus is the producer's gain from trade, or this is the difference between the price received and the minimum price at which producers would be willing to sell. Okay, so to calculate the total producer surplus, we'll basically sum up the producer surplus of each seller. Now let's understand this from graph. So the argument to calculate the producer surplus is similar what we did while calculating the consumer surplus. In the vertical axis we write price, and the horizontal we write quantity. So you can imagine this supply curve as a step function, and then to calculate the to calculate the producer surplus, we'll basically calculate the area of each rectangle, and when we when we add all those rectangles, area of those rectangles, will get the producer surplus. And when there is infinitely many producers, then the supply curve looks like a straight line, and the area between the price and the supply curve gives us the total producer surplus. So let's say this is the price of a good in the market, and so the area between the supply curve and the price is basically total producer surplus. Okay, now let's consider the two individual supply curves. Two individual supply curves. Let me draw the picture. Okay, let me use the different color. So this is one supply curve, and this is another supply curve, and these two are parallel. So on the vertical axis we write price, on the horizontal we write quantity. So these two curves, the green and the red line, represents the supply curve of the same quantity at two different places. Let's say this is at the place G and this is at the F. So now the question is, how do we obtain the market supply curve? Okay, market supply curve. So let's say this is the price $20. Okay, and the highest price is $50, or let's say $100. Okay, so, and this is 0. So within the price range 0 to $20, the total quantity supplied is given by the red line only, right? So up to this point, the total quantity supplied is given by the red line only. But within the range $20 to $100, the total quantity supplied is the sum of the quantity supplied of the individual supply curves. Okay. So to draw the market supply curve, we take a point of the same y coordinate on both of these straight line, the green line and the red line, and then we draw a horizontal line passing through these 2 points. And this will be parallel to the horizontal axis because both of these 2 points have the same y coordinates. And to get the market supply curve, we need a point which is the sum of the x coordinates of these 2 points. So we'll basically sum up the x coordinate of these 2 points, and the y coordinate will be the same as these 2 points. So let's say we get the point somewhere here, which is the sum of the x coordinate of these 2 points and the y coordinate. Okay, and we'll pass a straight line passing through this point and this point. So let me draw a line, a straight line passing through these 2 points. Okay, so this entire line, let me draw it with a different color. So this entire line is the market supply curve. Okay, this entire line is the market supply curve. Market supply curve. Okay, so today we covered the demand curve and the supply curve, and so today we covered the market supply curve and the market demand curve, as well as we also looked at the consumer surplus and the producer surplus. Okay, so now we'll put the demand and supply curve in the same graph. Okay, so let me draw the graph. So this is supply curve and this is demand curve. Okay, and this point is the market equilibrium. Because at this point, at a certain price in the market, let's say this is $6. Okay, so at this point, at this price, the quantity demanded by the buyers and the quantity supplied by the sellers are exactly same. Okay, so at market equilibrium, the quantity demanded and the quantity supplied is equal, and the market tends to be in the equilibrium for forever unless any external force creates the disturbance. Let's write the price in the vertical axis and the quantity on the horizontal axis. Now let's consider a situation when the market is not in the equilibrium. Okay, so let's say the price higher than the market equilibrium price. So let's say the current price in the market is here at $8. So at this price, what is the quantity demanded by the buyers? The quantity demanded is given by the demand curve, right? So let's say this is 2 unit, and let's say the quantity equilibrium quantity is 3 units, and the quantity supplied is given by the supply curve. Let's say this is 4 units. So at this price, the quantity demanded is only 2 units and the quantity supplied is 4 units. So what is so how much quantity will be traded in the market? Only 2 units, right? Because you cannot force the buyer to buy more. So now my question is, who are the people who will buy the good in the market? Only these people, right? Because they have the willingness to pay more than the current market price, that is $8. And now who are the people who want to sell in the market? These people, right? They are they want to sell their goods in the market at this price. But since the quantity demanded is only 2 units, so there will be 2 units of 2 units of producers, or 2 producers in the market who will be unsatisfied because the quantity demanded is only 2 units. So these unsatisfied buyers will go to these marginal buyers, okay, and offer them the lower price. So looking at this lower price, these buyers will also shift to the unsatisfied sellers, and uh, purchase the good from them instead of buying from the other sellers who offers the higher price. And this creates the downward pressure on the price, and then the price will lower down and again reaches the equilibrium price. So in this way, the equilibrium will be achieved in the market again. Now let's consider the situation when the price is below the market equilibrium price. Okay, so let's say the price is at $4. Okay, so in the previous example, this is the excess supply, right? This is the excess supply because the quantity supplied was 2 unit and the quantity demanded was 2 unit and the quantity supplied was 4 units. So the length of this line gives us the excess supply. Now, since the price is lower than the market equilibrium price, the length of this line gives us the excess demand, or we can also call it shortage, because the quantity supplied is only 2 units and the quantity demand is 4 units. So there will be 2 units of shortage in the market. So there will be some consumers who will be unsatisfied because they cannot get the good. So they will offer the higher price to the sellers, and this will create the upward pressure on the price, and then again the equilibrium will be achieved. So the market will again achieve the equilibrium price. So in this way, the market, even if the prices goes up or down, the market will return back to the equilibrium price and the quantity. Okay, so far we saw the consumer surplus as well as producer surplus. Now let's look at the total economic surplus when the demand and supply curve are put together, or the market is at equilibrium. Okay, so let me draw the graph. On the horizontal axis we have quantity, and the vertical axis we have price. Let's say this is the supply curve and this is the demand curve. Okay, so this is supply curve and this is demand curve. So now okay, let me also write the equilibrium price and quantity. Let's say this is $30 and this is 65 unit, that is equilibrium quantity. Now my question is, what is the total economic surplus? So to find out the total economic surplus, we need to find out the consumer surplus and the producer surplus. Okay, so what is the consumer surplus first? We know that the consumer surplus is the area above the equilibrium price and below the demand curve. So the area of this triangle is the consumer surplus, right? We call it let's call it A. Now what is the producer surplus? So the producer surplus is the area below the price and above the supply curve. So the area of this triangle, we call it, let's call it B. So the total economic surplus is the area of the triangle A and the area of the triangle B. We can also find this economic surplus in a different way. So let me ask, what is the total cost? What is the total cost in the market? So the total cost is basically the sum of the marginal cost occurred by the producers. So here you can see that when we find out the area of all these very small rectangles, we get the sum of the marginal cost occurred by the producers. So this entire area, let's call it C, is the total cost of the market. Okay, so the total cost is the area of C. Now what is the total benefit in the market? So the total benefit is basically the total satisfaction that the consumers get in the market, right? So what is the total satisfaction that the consumers get? So the total satisfaction is basically the sum of each marginal satisfaction, right? So when we sum up these small rectangles until this equilibrium point, we'll get the total benefit. Okay, so let me call this entire area E. So the total benefit that we get is E. Okay, and the difference between the benefit and the cost basically gives us the economic surplus, total economic surplus. So the total economic surplus is total benefit minus total cost, which is E minus C. And you can also see from the graph that when we subtract the area C, that is this part. Okay, let me highlight this with a different color. Basically this region. Okay, so when we subtract this region C from this entire region, okay, so we'll get this area, basically A plus B. Okay, so this is the total economic surplus. So there are two different ways to find out the economic surplus. You can use either one. Okay, so So far we covered the consumer surplus, producer surplus, total economic surplus, total cost, total benefit. So that's it for this video. In the next video we'll cover some other topics of microeconomics. So thank you so much for watching this video.